99% of amateur pool players executing free rail kicks are wasting their time. They simply hit and just hope for the best. I'm sorry, but it is true. My name is Adam, and in this video I will ask you to pay attention to this one simple system. A system that will turn your free rail kicks into something predictable and repeatable. No guessing, no luck, just clear lines you can trust. Once you get this, you will be able to leave the wrong group and join the really serious pool players who nail those free roll kicks for breakfast.
Oh, what an effort. Oh my god.
Sounds cool, right? So let's dive in. Imagine a straight line running from this corner pocket to the second diamond on the long rail. That's our first reference line. If you place the cue ball anywhere on that line and send it along the exact track, using running spin and natural speed, the cue ball will travel 3 rails and head straight toward that corner pocket. And this means that we place a 9 ball, which will be a pocket hanger. Then using this reference line we can pocket that ball. Now here's the important part. Running spin and natural speed are absolutely essential, because without them the cue ball won't follow the correct path. Every table plays a little differently, and this reference line shows the path of the cue ball in perfect conditions. However, on fresh cloth we would have to aim a little earlier, and on older cloth a little further. In my opinion, this is kind of guesswork, so I prefer to hit the cue ball along the reference line, but simply add more side spin. However, we must remember that this scenario will only work if there are no other balls that could block the natural path. Alright, and now let's move on to reference line number 2. This line also starts at the same corner pocket, but this time it runs to the third diamond on the side rail. So if we put the cue ball on that line and hit it with running spin and natural speed, the cue ball will travel 3 rails and contact the long rail near the first diamond. That means if your object ball is positioned close to this area, this reference line gives you a predictable way to reach it. And finally, reference line number 3. Once again, the line begins at the same corner pocket, but this time it runs to the first diamond on the side rail. Sending the cue ball along this path with proper spin and speed makes it contact 3 rails and head toward the short rail just before the corner pocket. So if the object ball is near that zone, this reference line becomes your exact aiming point. What is very interesting is that if we hit along reference line number 2, the object ball goes towards this diamond, and if we hit along reference line number 1, the cue ball goes towards the pocket. So why does hitting along the reference line number 3, cue ball contacts the short rail half a diamond from the corner pocket? The answer is very simple, because the cue ball moves towards an imaginary diamond on the long rail, which is located behind the table surface, and this is why it hits the short rail first at that point. As you can see, when the cue ball is located in this area, these 3 reference lines cover a range of paths that all finish near the same corner pocket. And here is an important observation, because each reference line changes where the cue ball hits the rails. With line number 1, the rail contacts happen here. When we used second reference line, then cue ball contacted short rail bit further and long rail bit earlier, But on the other hand, when we used third reference line, then cue ball contacted short rail much earlier and long rail much further than before. Differences are clearly visible, and this knowledge will be very helpful in the next part of this video. Alright, so now you might be wondering what happens if the cue ball isn't sitting exactly on one of those reference lines. Let's say the cue ball is in the center of the table and you want to pocket a Hunger 9 ball near that corner pocket. Because the object ball is close to the corner pocket, we'll use reference line number 1. First of all, we need to parallel shift that line to the cue ball's current position. Then we need to create a new line exactly between those two, and that final line gives us our new aiming point on the rail. Hit with running spin and natural speed, and the cue ball will follow the correct V-rail path and reach the 9 ball. What is interesting is that even though the first two rail contacts change, the key long rail contact stays nearly identical to the original reference line. If the object ball moves into this area, you repeat the same process, but now using reference line number 2. Parallel shift it to the cue ball, split the difference, and you have found your final aiming point. And if the object ball shifts again into this area, you simply apply the same adjustment using reference line number 3. So far we have looked at shots near the pocket, but what if the object ball is farther away? Imagine both balls positioned like this. None of the 3 reference lines directly match the object ball location. In this case, we cannot use any secret system, but we can use the knowledge acquired previously to find our aiming point. We have to work between the two closest reference lines, here lines 1 and 2. We need to shift our cue to the center of the object ball in relation to both closest lines, which will set a new track line that is a bit closer to the path representing reference line number 2. And now we need to stand right behind the cue ball and aim between those two diamonds, but remember to aim closer to reference line number 2. With natural speed and running spin, the cue ball follows the calculated path and contacts the object ball. But now let's look at even a tougher situation when the cue ball is also out of the reference lines and the object ball is far from the pocket. The object ball is located same like before, so it tells us what the cue ball's path must be after the last rail. To find our final aiming point, once again we need to look at the space between reference lines 1 and 2 and use the exact same line like in the previous example. However, this time we need to parallel shift that line to the cue ball's center and then find another line which is exactly in the middle between those two lines. We can see our final aiming point on the rail, and with proper spin and speed, the cue ball will stay on the correct path. I know these calculations may look weird, but I promise you, it really works. However, most importantly, you must remember that every table plays differently. Because I play on an older cloth, I have to use bit more side spin, so be ready to use proper adjustments following all steps which I explained to you before. Alright, but now, forget everything I just told you before. Okay, I'm kidding. Right now I'm going to show you a simple trick that can help you nail every free rail kick. Let's say your cue ball is located right in the center of the table and you want to pocket the hanger 9 ball near that corner pocket. If you remember from the previous part of this video, when the object ball is a pocket hanger, we use reference line number 1, which runs from this corner pocket to the second diamond on this long rail. And this time the idea is exactly the same, except for one key change. Instead of stopping at the table, you extend that line past it and look for a point about 5 to 10 feet away. Most of the time that point ends up somewhere on the wall, and in my case it lands right here, on this part of the mirror. And right here is where it gets fun. For the purpose of this video, I mark that point by placing a practice ball on my cue case, and once again I step behind the cue ball, and all I have to do is aim straight at that spot to send the cue ball free rails and pocket the 9 ball. But remember again, speed and spin still matter a lot, because they decide whether we make contact with the 9 ball. And here's the bonus. No matter where you move the cue ball, you can still aim at the same spot on the wall to make the 9 ball using free rails. Alright, but now let's change things up. Imagine you move the 9 ball closer to that diamond. If you think back to the earlier explanation, when the object ball is near that diamond, we use reference line number 2, which runs from the corner pocket to the third diamond. Because of that shift, our original wall spot no longer works. Instead, we repeat the same process, but now we extend reference line number 2 beyond the table. As you can see, extending that line gives us a brand new point on the mirror, slightly farther to the right than before. Aiming at that point with the right speed and the running spin lets me contact the 9 ball, no matter where I hit the cue ball from. So if we move the 9 ball again into this area, the process stays the same. Use reference line number 3. Extend it past the table. Mark your third spot on the wall and hit the cue ball towards that point to make contact with the 9 ball. Alright, but now you might be thinking, why not just use the spot on the wall every time, instead of doing all those calculations from the first part of the video? And well, remember, we are trying to find a point 5 to 10 feet past the table. If there is no wall or any other object there, you simply can't establish that reference. For example, when I move to the opposite side of the table, the closest surface is this sofa, and it is too far away, which makes the reference unreliable. So when the cue ball is located outside your reference lines, it can sometimes be easier to switch back to a parallel shift to find your aiming point. But above all, always focus on natural speed, running spin, and remember that every table reacts differently, so be ready to use correct adjustments, which I talked about earlier. That's the spot on the wall. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. But once you use this trick, you will nail every free rail kick consistently. Another thing you can control is improving the quality of your training, and you can do this by visiting Pool Billiards.co, a platform where you can find ready-made patterns or create your own. The link in the description gives you 20% off premium membership, so don't wait for the perfect moment and start improving your game right now. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe if you want more real usable pool tips, and comment below telling me if this trick saved you in a match. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next video. Take care.